In 1986, a game called the Hyrule Fantasy released in Japan. The next year, almost exactly 30 years ago today, it was released in the West under its subtitle name, The Legend of Zelda. This year, the latest installment in the Zelda series, Breath of the Wild, released as a launch title for Nintendo's brand new Nintendo Switch system. Almost all the games in the series have received critical acclaim and are considered among the best video games of all time. But in the past 30 years, at some point, the transition had to be made between this and this. That's where this comes in. The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. And before you start writing comments about how I'm mispronouncing Ocarina and how it should be Ocarina, I checked beforehand, and either pronunciation is acceptable. Anyway, this game was released on the Nintendo 64 in November 1998 as the very first 3D Zelda adventure. I'm not exaggerating when I say that this is the best reviewed video game of all time. I've never gotten the chance to play it before, and honestly I don't really know why, but now that it's time to begin the N64 Chronicles, what better way than to start with the best N64 game of all time. Let's do this. The game opens up with probably the most famous cutscene in video game history. A young Link has a nightmare, where he sees Princess Zelda fleeing Hyrule Castle with Ganondorf close behind. He wakes up from the nightmare, and the game begins. This game really wants you to explore, and has plenty for you to see and do, not only in this village, but practically everywhere in Hyrule. But I don't have the time for that. I'm going to play this game straight through. After all, I got a kingdom to save. You hold the controller like this, by the way. It's different for every game. Your new fairy friend Navi takes you to the Great Deku Tree. It's a chore to get there, but I was able to figure it out on my own. Now, I've got to tell you, once I got inside the Great Deku Tree, I pretty much used a walkthrough for the rest of the game. I'll get more into that later. The Great Deku Tree is the first of several dungeons in this game. Dungeons are a staple among the Zelda games, and are in all of them except Breath of the Wild. Unfortunately for me, Breath of the Wild was the first Zelda game I ever played, let alone finished, so transitioning to dungeons was not easy for me. Thankfully, they start off pretty self-explanatory, and the Great Deku Tree is a little on the small side, so within just about 2 or 3 hours of first booting up the game, I had it beat. The boss of the dungeon, Queen Goma, was the hardest part, but that just made it all the more rewarding when I actually beat her. The first part of the game is all done, and I gotta be honest, I'm having a blast. I'm having so much fun. I've heard Ocarina of Time was a good game, but I wasn't expecting to have so much fun out of it. It makes me excited to keep playing it, and to finish it as soon as possible. After beating the dungeon, the Deku Tree sends you off to Hyrule Castle before, well, he dies. Just like that. How rude. Just as you leave Kokiri Forest, you're stopped by your best friend Saria, who gives you an ocarina. It's just a regular one, not the Ocarina of Time like the title, but I really like this scene. There's a lot of emotion behind this simple gift from your best friend, as you're about to leave for a grand journey. Now you get to Hyrule Field, and it is huge. Frankly, I'm surprised the N64 can handle an overworld map this large. If you really wanted to, you could spend hours walking around here. But since we don't have hours, we need to get to Hyrule Castle. For some reason, Hyrule Castle is actually pretty big on security, and you have to sneak your way in instead of just going straight through the front door. Conveniently, it's not only possible, but easy. Someone should probably tell the king to replace all his guards. Inside the castle, when all's said and done, you finally meet Princess Zelda. Honestly, this is my favorite scene from the whole game. Zelda is about the same age as you, and even though she has mistrust against the king's loyal soldier Ganondorf, she treats it more like a game than an actual threat. The innocence of childhood is done extremely well. But more than that, what got me most was the facial expressions of Zelda. For primitive 3D graphics, they did an amazing job of making her look and feel like a living, breathing person. The music in the background fits her personality perfectly, and she even teaches it to you on the Ocarina. Fittingly enough, the song is called Zelda's Lullaby. In order to stop Ganondorf from coming into power over Hyrule, Zelda tasks you with finding 3 spiritual stones, which are spread throughout Hyrule. Turns out you already have one of them. The Great Deku Tree gave it to you before you flew to Coop. The other 2 are found on Death Mountain with the Gorons, and in Zora's Domain with the Zoras. Before you go to either, you need to do some chores first, and with how much walking this involves and how cryptic everything is starting to become, they are chores. You need to go to Kakariko Village to learn the Sun Song, which allows you to control day and night. Okay, that one's optional, but very useful for avoiding nighttime enemies. Then you need to go learn Epona's Song, which is absolutely useless for now, but apparently will help out later in the game. Then you need to go to Lost Woods, meet up with Saria, and she'll teach you Saria's Song. Coincidentally, this is actually my favorite song in the game. Borderline useless, but catchy. Along the way, you also find some great fairy fountains. The fairies give you ability upgrades, and you remember how I said earlier that the graphics in this game have aged well? Well... After all that, you make your way up Death Mountain and go to Goron City. There, you meet the Gorons, a group of people that remind me of Fred Flintstone for some reason. To meet with their leader, Darunia, you need to stand in front of the door and play Zelda's Lullaby. Then you need to stand in front of him and play Saria's Song. He's in such a good mood, he'll just give you the Spiritual Stone of Fire, as long as you can complete the next dungeon. So you spend another hour on that dungeon, finishing it up by throwing bombs in the mouth of a lizard, and then Dunaria gives you the Spiritual Stone of Fire. Then a bunch of Gorons try and kill you with hugs. Next up, Zora's Domain. The cryptic nature of this game just gets even worse at this point. You go to Zora's Domain, which is actually very beautiful, and are met with King Zora. His daughter is missing, so you have to go find her. That means having to dive through a small hole in the bottom of the nearby river, pop up in Lake Hylia, find a bottle at the bottom of the lake, inside of which is a letter from his daughter. She's inside Jabu Jabu's belly and doesn't want her father to look for her, so you take the letter to the king, and he moves aside to let you pass. Come on! Hurry up! Man! Oh my gosh! For real? Hurry up! I've seen Continental drift faster than this! For crying out loud! Oh, finally! Thanks, Nintendo. So you go behind him, deliver a fish to Jabu Jabu, and are let inside. Here you meet Princess Ruto, the naked Zora princess who has a major crush on you. This sounds familiar.
You know, perhaps we could spend some time together.
Princess Ruto is a bit of a brat and refuses to go anywhere unless you pick her up and take her places. Way to fight for women's rights, princess. The dungeon is even more cryptic than the last one, and at this point I genuinely don't think I could have made it through without my walkthrough guide. There are a few mini-bosses here as well, so about now is when the game's difficulty really ramps up. However, once you've beaten the boss, Ruto gives you the Spiritual Stone of Water, on the condition that you agree to marry her when you're both older. Sure, that's not creepy at all. At long last, now that you have all the spiritual stones, you can go back to Princess Zelda and deliver them. However, there is one small problem. Going to Hyrule Castle, you'll witness the cutscene from earlier, the one that you dreamed about when you first loaded up the game. This time, however, Zelda recognizes you as she flees to the castle, and throws the Ocarina of Time to you. What makes this one so special, I have no idea, but it replaces the one that Saria gave you, which as far as I know is as good as gone now. Rude! Also this time, Ganondorf actually interacts with you. He's incredibly perceptive and realizes that you are in cahoots with Zelda. He lets you go, and your job now is to go to the Temple of Time and use your Ocarina of Time to play the Song of Time. Also, I guarantee that after I said that, you looked to see how much time was left in this video. Suckers! After you do this, a hidden vault opens up, revealing the Master Sword. As you pull it, however, Ganondorf shows up again. Turns out he was following you, and was waiting for you to open the vault in order to obtain the power he needs to overthrow Hyrule. And this is where the game gets interesting, and brings about its most famous mechanic. You pass out, and when you are woken up by a creepy old man, 7 years have passed. Turns out Link is the hero of time, destined to defeat Ganondorf, but he wasn't powerful enough as a boy, so he was turned into an adult in order to make him strong enough. Yeah, Link, now you need to worry about adult things, like student loans and taxes and... Thanks, Nintendo. I had completely forgotten about all those things until now. The creepy old man is one of 7 sages, and if all 7 come together, they can weaken Ganondorf enough for Link to defeat him. It's up to Link to find the other 6, most of whom he already knows anyway. As you leave the Temple of Time to find them, you come across a ninja named Sheik, who will be helping you throughout your time as an adult. As you leave the town, things look pretty bad. All the lively townsfolk from before are gone, replaced by some zombies who can suck away your life faster than watching Oprah reruns. Luckily, they're all gone by the time you get back to Hyrule Field. There's even more chores to do before you find all the 7 sages, and that should have been the name of the game. The Legend of Zelda, Ocarina of Chores. Not as catchy, but just as descriptive. Remember Epona's song, which we learned 7 years ago? We use that to get Epona, but that's not enough. You need to play a minigame. Not even 1 minigame, 3. But if you can do all that, and then escape the fencing on top of that, then Epona is yours. And trust me, with all the running around you have to do as an adult, Epona will come in very handy. The sages are located in various temples throughout Hyrule, which we couldn't access until now as an adult. The first stage is Saria, our best friend as a kid, and the girl who gave us our old ocarina. Still don't know where that ended up. So you have to go through the Forest Temple to get to her, and let me tell you, if you thought the dungeons were insane in the past, they're even worse now. Actually, let me sum up all the temples in this part of the video, because they're all basically the same. The temples are huge. So huge, even with a walkthrough. I spent about 2.5 hours on each of them. They're set up in such a way that you need to retread your steps a lot, and many of the areas are not accessible except by obtaining small keys in various chests. Each temple also has a special item that you need to get through not only that temple, but through all the others afterward, and you can only obtain that item inside the temple itself. Some temples require special items to get into the temple, like the iron boots to get inside the water temple. Some temples require you to do stuff in the past as young Link, like get the Lens of Truth at the bottom of a well in Kakariko Village. When I first pulled the Master Sword out of the pedestal, I thought that would be the halfway point in this game. I was wrong! That's about 1/3 of the way through. All because these temples are so big and so cryptic, I don't know how anyone could get through these without a guide! And the worst part of all is the bosses! The bosses are ungodly in how difficult they are. The Forest Temple's boss is Phantom Ganon. It takes place in a room of paintings, and he rides across the room from one to another on his horse. You need the fairy bow to beat him, or the hookshot if you're out of arrows. Yeah, guess what? I tried so many times I actually lost all my arrows, so I was stuck with the hookshot. His second phase involves playing ping pong, and can you believe it's actually best to use an empty bottle to play? Yeah, check this out. I'm playing ping pong with Ganondorf, using an empty bottle! I beat Phantom Ganon with a hookshot and an empty bottle. I am basically playing this game on hard mode, aren't I? Gorunia is the fire stage, so you have to go to the fire temple to get to him. The fire temple's boss is this awesome dragon-type creature. Funny enough, this one wasn't as difficult for me once I got the pattern down. Don't get me wrong, it still took me several tries to beat it, but this is the first time in a long time in this game that I actually got enjoyment out of a boss fight. Almost all the other ones felt like chores rather than fun. I mean, that is the point of playing a video game, right? To have fun? It should come as no shock that Princess Ruto, who still has a major crush on you, is the water sage. I was dreading the water temple ever since I started playing the game, but surprisingly, it was actually pretty simple getting through with the walkthrough. I even beat the boss on the first try. I'm not sure if I should get a medal or something, but it was a nice surprise getting through it so easily. Next up is the Shadow Temple. And let me lay it out for you guys. I spent about 9 hours altogether on this temple, and I still haven't beaten it. You want to know why? Getting through this temple is actually pretty easy. The problem is the boss. I've read all kinds of tips and tricks, I've watched so many strategy videos, but no matter what, my battles always go a bit like this. I manage to stun one hand, then get wrecked by the other, and die in 2 hits. Maybe I'm doing something wrong or something, but honestly it wouldn't even be that big of a problem except for one fatal flaw in this video game. When you die at a boss, it starts you all the way back at the beginning of the dungeon. Previously that wasn't a problem. The boss doors were pretty close to the entrances of the dungeon, just locked away until the very end. The Shadow Temple is different. You have to spend a good 5 or 10 minutes walking all the way back to the boss, and after all that time, I still get absolutely destroyed within less than a minute, only to have to make the trek back all over again! I'm sorry. I've spent so much time trying to beat that boss, I can't take it anymore. And trust me, I want to. I really, really want to. Can you imagine how satisfying that's going to be when I eventually do beat that boss and complete the game? But at some point, enough is enough. I've been playing this game for 6 months trying to get this video done for you guys, and I'm just not having fun anymore. Remember, that's the whole point to playing a video game, is to have fun. And if I'm not having fun, there's just no point in continuing anymore, is there? But just for you guys, here's a rundown of what happens in the rest of the game. The next sage is a Gerudo woman named Naburu, one of the only sages you haven't previously met. To get her, you have to go through the Spirit Temple, which I'm avoiding because I do want to finish the game someday, so I want to stay at least a little surprised. After that, Sheik reveals herself to actually be Princess Zelda, and she is the final sage. However, Ganondorf has grown powerful enough now to imprison her in this weird pink crystal thing. I wonder if it's worth money. To save her and to take down Ganondorf once and for all, you have to go back to Hyrule Castle, fight your way to the top, and take him down. This is notorious for being one of the hardest final bosses in all of video gaming, but it's very doable. After he's defeated, Zelda is freed, but then Ganondorf pulls out his trump card. He has a piece of the Triforce, and uses it to make himself even more powerful, transforming into his true form of Ganon. Ganon is the final boss, and it's only thanks to the help of Princess Zelda's power that you're able to take him down. Truly, this is one of the greatest endings ever to a video game. All that hard work that you've put into this game, all the monotony, and chores, and crypticism, it's all worth it because you've saved the world. The game ends with Zelda sending you back into the past in order for you to live a proper childhood, and also to warn the past Zelda to defeat Ganondorf before he became too powerful. The official Legend of Zelda timeline actually splits into 3 here. The first timeline is actually one where Link fails to defeat Ganon, and the goddesses of Hyrule personally intervene to lock him away. The games following this include A Link to the Past and most of the handheld games. The second timeline continues after Zelda sends Link back in time, and includes games like The Wind Waker. The third one follows Link after he is sent back, and creates a new timeline that later includes Twilight Princess. It's a very confusing, but fascinating focal point of the series. All future Zelda games were affected by the final outcome of this game. And despite its flaws, this is an amazing game. Hard, but amazing, and I can definitely see why people call it one of the greatest games of all time. Everything from the graphics, to the gameplay, to the story, and all the extra stuff you can do when you're not busy saving the world. It's truly amazing. I hope to beat it myself someday. I'll come back to it, and finish what I started. A game this good deserves to be beaten! It deserves to be played for years and years to come. This game came out pretty early in the Nintendo 64's lifetime, and set a stage for a lot of amazing games on just as amazing of a system. And with that, this concludes the first episode of the N64 Chronicles. I'm sure that the rest of the games on the system aren't nearly this long. They're not, are they? Please tell me they're not. Are they? Are they all really this long? Oh, my God, what have I gotten myself into? Thanks, Nintendo.